We live in interesting times. For the headlines. Hong Kong is preparing for a weekend of demonstrations and a democracy march on Sunday, but police have banned the march. Previous bans have been widely ignored and soon descended into violence with hardcore activists. Turkish forces and Kurdish groups are still engaged in sporadic clashes in a battleground Syrian border town, according to a monitor, but a U.S. brokered deal truce appears to be holding in many parts of northern Syria. In a stunning admission, a top White House official said President Trump had tied military aid for Ukraine to Kiev, undertaking an investigation that would help the president politically, adding ammunition to the Democrats' impeachment probe. And China's economy expanded at its slowest rate in nearly 3 decades in the third quarter, hit by cooling domestic demand and a protracted U.S. trade war. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. Hong Kong is preparing for a weekend of demonstrations and a democracy march on Sunday, the latest moves in more than 4 months of anti-government protests. Police on Friday rejected a permit request for this march. Now, previous protest rejections by police have been widely ignored by protesters and quickly turned violent. Hardcore protesters have embraced vandalism and throwing petrol bombs, while riot police respond with volleys of tear gas, rubber bullets, and more recently, live rounds. Protesters are demanding an independent inquiry into the police, an amnesty for those arrested, and fully free elections, all of which have been rejected by Beijing and Hong Kong's chief and leader. Now, migrant workers in Hong Kong usually spend their day off in parks, chatting with friends and video calling loved ones back home. Now, this summer, their downtime keeps getting disrupted by protests and tear gas. There are 370,000 domestic workers, overwhelmingly women from Indonesia and the Philippines, who keep Hong Kong ticking and often toil for little pay and in cramped conditions. Domestic workers earn a million of 4,630 Hong Kong dollars a month and must live with their employees or employers in Hong Kong's notoriously small flats. Now, rights groups have long complained that they are easily exploited by unscrupulous employers and hiring agents. They're only entitled to 1 day off a week, and most take Sundays off. Now, on their day off, Indonesian workers traditionally flock to the Causeway Bay district, while Filipinos tend to gather in nearby Central and Admiralty. Now, all three have become frequent flashpoints during this summer's protests.
Because one day I was out and suddenly the guy all come and then the guests on us. Thanks God, they're very good. They will tell us, don't go this way, I bring you go this way, and put the umbrella to us. We used to stay close to our employer house because for me, if we go far away, we worry we cannot go home. We have the duty, 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock must be home. We never have planned to leave Hong Kong because of this situation. Because our employers still need us and we also still need a job. Like now it's getting worse. But I know why they become like getting worse, because maybe for the good future for Hong Kong.
NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has said that China demanded that a Houston Rockets executive be sacked for supporting pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. Rocket's general manager Daryl Morey ignited the firestorm earlier this month with a tweeted image captioned, "Fight for Freedom, Stand with Hong Kong." It came right before the Los Angeles Lakers and Brooklyn Nets arrived in China for what proved to be a tense two-game exhibition tour, with broadcasters refusing to air the games, public anger raging, and local sponsors cutting ties with the NBA. Now, China has portrayed the protesters as violent separatists and bristled at what it calls foreign interference in the matter. The backlash in China against Morey's comments has cast a cloud over the NBA's lucrative broadcasting, merchandising, and sponsorship interests in the country, where it has legions of fans. Now, Mr. Adam Silver said during a panel discussion in New York, quote, "We were being asked to fire him by the Chinese government, by the parties we dealt with, government and business. We said there's no chance that's happening, and there's no chance we'll even discipline him." Now, Beijing on Friday issued a flat denial. The Chinese government has never raised these kinds of demands, Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang told reporters. But Mr. Adam Silver said the dispute over Morey's actions had taken a big toll on the league's bottom line. "I don't know where we go from here," Silver said. "The financial consequences have been and may continue to be fairly dramatic." The losses have already been substantial, he added. "Our games are not back on the air in China as we speak, and we'll see what happens next." Mr. Silver hit back at criticism of the NBA's earlier statements on the crisis, which many saw as overly deferential to authoritarian Beijing. "We were saying we regretted upsetting our fans, but also at the same time supporting Daryl Morey's right to express himself, right to tweet. Maybe I was trying too hard to be a diplomat. There was no regret directed to the government, but instead to our fans, hundreds of millions of them in China." Beijing's response to Morey's comments sparked U.S. accusations that Beijing was using access to its vast market as leverage to dictate public dialogue in other countries. Hong Kong's embattled leader took to Facebook Live late Thursday in a bid to reach out to citizens after months of political unrest, and the emoji count was far from kind. Mrs. Carrie Lam, the city's unelected chief executive, currently boasts record low approval ratings as the financial hub convulses with more than 4 months of huge, increasingly violent pro-democracy protests. Backed by Beijing, her administration has refused to grant any major concessions to protesters who are demanding greater democratic freedoms and police accountability. Angry faces significantly outnumbered hearts and likes left by viewers on the hour-long Facebook Live broadcast, while critics also used the comment section to pile on. By the end of the session, in which a host chose from a series of pre-selected questions and some live ones, the angry face count stood at more than 9,400 compared to 2,100 likes and 632 hearts. Mrs. Lam defended her record and stuck to her oft-repeated talking points that she cannot give in to violent protesters and won't be resigning. In other news, Turkey has agreed to suspend its Syria offensive for 5 days and will end the assault if Kurdish-led forces withdraw from a safe zone along the border. Take a look.
Our commitment with Turkey is that we will work with YPG members and we also know as Syrian Defense Forces to facilitate an orderly withdrawal over the next 120 hours. And let me say that's literally already begun. And where they will be withdrawing from is the demarcation line, roughly 20 miles south of the border. We think the agreement today first ends the violence, which is what President Trump sent us here to do. I said it again and again to President Erdogan. Is President Trump sent us here to end violence and to achieve an immediate ceasefire. Once we have a permanent ceasefire, following the orderly withdrawal of all YPG forces, the United States also agreed to withdraw the sanctions that were imposed on several cabinet officials and several agencies earlier this year.
Now, as he said there, no new sanctions would be added during the ceasefire, and sanctions imposed by the U.S. on Turkey since the beginning of the operation would be withdrawn once the military operation is fully halted.
Part of our understanding is that with the implementation of the ceasefire, the United States will not impose any further sanctions on Turkey. And once a permanent ceasefire is in effect, the President has agreed to withdraw the economic sanctions that were imposed this last Monday.
Now, the agreement for a 120-hour ceasefire to allow a Kurdish militia to pull out was hailed by U.S. President Trump as a great day for Turkey and the Kurdish population. Kurdish forces will have to withdraw from an area that is 32 kilometers deep, which is expected to eventually become a safe zone that Turkey has sought for months as part of the U.S.-Turkey deal. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF chief Mazlum Abdi, said they are ready to abide by the ceasefire covering the area from Ras Al Ain to Tal Abyad.
It's a great day for the United States. It's a great day for Turkey. It's a great day for our partners who have really worked. I mean, a lot of people question some of them. I'm not questioning anybody. They really did. The Kurds were great. It's a great day for the Kurds. It's really a great day for civilization.
Turkey's military offensive, dubbed Operation Peace Spring, began on October 9, days after the White House announced a withdrawal of U.S. troops from the area. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan wants to create a buffer zone stretching 30 kilometers from the border into Syrian territory, because he wants to destroy Kurdish hopes of an autonomous enclave that Turkey fears could serve as a launch pad for attacks on its soil and to resettle some of the 3.6 million Syrian refugees Ankara is hosting. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War Monitor said more than 300,000 civilians had been displaced within Syria since the start of the assault, calling it one of the largest upheavals since Syria's civil war began in 2011. The monitor also said nearly 500 people have been killed, including dozens of civilians, the majority on the Kurdish side. Meanwhile, clashes between Turkish forces and Kurdish groups were outgoing in a battleground Syrian border town Friday, despite a U.S.-brokered suspension to Ankara's deadly 9-day offensive in northern Syria. Turkey announced a 5-day suspension late Thursday after a meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and U.S. Vice President Mike Pence in Ankara. Under the deal, Kurdish forces are required to withdraw from a border strip 32 kilometers deep, making a safe zone sought by Turkey. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces said they were ready to abide by the ceasefire in the territory from Ras Al Ain to Tal Abyad in northern Syria. Since the offensive's launch on October 9, the Turkish military and Syrian proxies, mostly Arab and Turkmen, former rebels used as a ground force, seized around 120 kilometers of territory along the border. More than 500 people have been killed on the two sides, including nearly 100 civilians, while around 300,000 have been displaced, according to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory Monitoring Group. Ankara said the aim of the offensive was to create a safe zone cleared of Kurdish groups. Heavily armed gunmen waged an all-out battle against Mexican security forces after they moved to arrest a son of jailed drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in his home state, Sinaloa. Take a look. Security Minister Alfonso Durazo said soldiers on a routine afternoon patrol came under fire from a residence in the state capital, Culiacan. He said they responded by taking the house and detaining 4 people inside, including Ovidio Guzman, one of several sons of El Chapo, who have partly taken over the Sinaloa cartel since he was extradited to the U.S. in 2017. Durazo said cartel gunmen then surrounded the house, outnumbering the soldiers, and began a massive assault on various parts of the western city. That triggered an hours-long battle that left blazing vehicles strewn across the street and sent terrified residents running for shelter. El Chapo, 62, was sentenced to life in prison in July for trafficking hundreds of tons of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana into the U.S. over the course of a quarter-century. However, his cartel remains one of the most powerful in Mexico.
Esto es increíble. Esto es increíble.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
CV ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows.
Po si Raymond Bernardo. Ako po si Raymond Bernardo. Abangan niyo po kami sa Pasiklaban sa Kusina.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
New Zealand police announced the introduction of armed patrols in response to the Christchurch mosque's massacre in which 51 Muslim worshippers were killed. The force prides itself on operating largely as an unarmed service, but Commissioner Mike Bush said changes needed to be implemented after the worst mass shooting in modern New Zealand history in March. Bush said, quote, "The threat level remains at medium and we are continuously reviewing our tools, training, and capabilities we use to provide policing services to ensure we remain fit for purpose." Officers on regular patrols in New Zealand do not carry firearms, but there are armed offender squads that can be mobilized when required. Under the new system being trialed in 3 regions, including Christchurch, AOS officers will be constantly on patrol in specialized vehicles, allowing for more rapid response times or respond times. In other news, Japan's new Emperor Naruhito will formally proclaim his ascension to the throne next week in a ritual-bound ceremony, but the after effects of deadly typhoon will cast a shadow over the proceedings. Naruhito officially assumed his duties as emperor on May 1, a day after his father became the first Japanese monarch to abdicate in 200 years. But the transition will not be complete until his new role is officially proclaimed on Tuesday in a series of events expected to be attended by foreign dignitaries from nearly 200 countries. The event will come just over a week after Typhoon Hagibis slammed into Japan, killing nearly 80 people and leaving a trail of destruction. With people still searching for missing loved ones and living in shelters, the government has opted to postpone a key part of the ceremony, an open top car parade that had been intended to introduce the royal pair to the public. But the rest of the day's ceremonies will go ahead, starting with rituals conducted behind closed doors, in which Naruhito will report the proclamation to his ancestors in the ancient royal dynasty. Hours later, he and his wife, Empress Masako, will appear at the main event in the Imperial Palace's most prestigious hall, the Pine Room. Oxford-educated Naruhito faces a delicate balancing act as emperor, seeking to continue his father's legacy of bringing the monarchy closer to the people while upholding the centuries-old traditions of the chrysanthemum throne. He has spoken up to defend his wife, who struggled with the transition to cloistered royal life after leaving behind a promising diplomatic career to marry Naruhito. The couple have one child, a 17-year-old daughter called Aiko, who cannot inherit the throne because she is female. With Naruhito's ascension, his brother Akishino became crown prince. Akishino's son, 13-year-old Hisahito, is currently the only other remaining successor. The dwindling ranks of male heirs in the royal family has rekindled debate about allowing female royals to ascend the throne, but so far there have been no formal moves to accommodate the possibility. In other news, Dutch police arrested the father of a family kept for nearly a decade in a farmhouse, saying they were investigating whether a certain belief in faith was behind the case. The 67-year-old was suspected of depriving people of their liberty, harming the health of others, and money laundering following the discovery of the people in the northern village of Runervold, according to police. He's the second person to be arrested. The 58-year-old tenant of the farmhouse, an Austrian man, appeared before an examining judge on Thursday on similar charges and was ordered to be detained for 2 weeks. Police said the group claimed to form a family, with the suspect arrested on Thursday as the father and the 6 young people, including one who raised the alarm after fleeing to a local pub, supposedly being his children. The family were discovered when the oldest son walked into a local bar in a confused state and raised concerns about the welfare of the others. Dutch media have said the family was waiting for the end of time as part of a doomsday cult. Local television RTV Drenthe earlier said the Austrian man, identified only as Joseph B., the father and the captive family were all part of South Korea's controversial unification church dubbed Moonies after their late founder, Sun Myung-moon. Wim Koitzer of the Universal Peace Federation, the name the church now goes by, confirmed that the father of the family was a member in the 1980s before leaving for Germany, where, quote, we lost sight of him. He said he believed the father, together with someone else, had since started their own group.
Echt wel. En bizar dat het kan, dat het in Nederland zo mogelijk is, dat dit zo kan. Dat je zo kan leven en ook heel lang, en ja, dat niemand daar iets van af weet eigenlijk. Dat vind ik het meest vreemde en bizarre eraan, ja.
Er was een man, en die hebben we wel gezien, en dat dachten wij dat dat de buurman was eigenlijk. Hè? Dus die daar eigenlijk in dat huis, altijd bezig was in het huis om te klussen en te verbouwen. En die kwam 's ochtends vroeg en die vertrok eind van de middag weer. Dus die sliep daar niet, die woonde daar niet. Ik begreep ook dat hij in Meppel woont en daar ook een werkplaats heeft. En die kwam altijd hier langs. En die man die hebben we natuurlijk wel gezien. Maar we hebben eigenlijk altijd het idee gehad dat hij ook de enige was die daar bezig was. En dat er verder ook geen mensen woonden. Dus dat is eigenlijk...
In other news, European Union leaders endorsed a hard-fought Brexit deal with Britain. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces an uphill battle getting it through the British Parliament. Take a look. The draft agreement was forged after weeks of tense negotiations focused on altering arrangements to keep open the border between British Northern Ireland and EU member Ireland. All sides agree they do not want infrastructure on the frontier to avoid exacerbating tensions over Britain's control of Northern Ireland that caused decades of delay, violence up until the 1990s. The new plan keeps the United Kingdom as a single customs territory, allowing it to strike international trade deals, but requiring London to levy EU tariffs on certain goods passing through Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland would also follow the EU's rules on agricultural, food, and industrial goods, but it would involve some customs and tax checks between Northern Ireland and mainland Britain, and the DUP warned the plans undermine the integrity of the Union. Take a look.
Le texte sur lequel nous nous sommes mis d'accord.
The text on which we've agreed protects the rights of our citizens. It protects peace and stability on the island of Ireland. Fundamentally, today's agreement applies to people and peace. Our agreement protects the rights of 4.5 million citizens, 3.5 million EU citizens living in the UK, and more than 1 million UK citizens living in the European Union. They can continue to live their lives as before. We've always put people first in these negotiations. The agreement also protects those who receive EU funding by means of the financial regulation. The agreement provides for a transitional period until the end of 2020 at least. It protects our geographical designations of origin, and it ensures an orderly withdrawal. We now have a new protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, which protects peace and stability on the island of Ireland and fully protects our single market.
That we stand united with Ireland. Over the past 2 years, we have worked very closely with the Taoiseach, and without the Taoiseach, it would not have been possible to reach an agreement today.
Moreover, we have the political declaration on the future relationship with the United Kingdom, and we've revised this slightly. This provides for an ambitious free trade agreement in the future without tariffs and quotas, and there are robust commitments to a level playing field.
So all in all, I'm happy, relieved that we reached a deal, but I'm sad because Brexit is happening.
So take the floor.
Thank you, Preben. We have concluded a discussion among the leaders about the Brexit deal that our negotiator agreed with the UK government earlier today. First of all, many thanks to Michel Barnier and his team for your outstanding work. The European Council endorsed this deal, and it looks like we are very close to the final stretch. Why has a deal that was impossible yesterday become possible today? Firstly, the new version of the deal has been positively assessed by Ireland. I've said from the beginning that we would always stand behind Ireland and not force a deal unfavorable to Dublin. Secondly, the deal has been positively assessed by the European Commission. This gives us certainty that it is favorable and safe for the citizens of the European Union. The key change in comparison with the earlier version of the deal is Prime Minister Johnson's acceptance to have customs checks at the points of entry into Northern Ireland. This compromise will allow us to avoid border checks between Ireland and Northern Ireland and will ensure the integrity of the single market. The reality is that today we have a deal which allows us to avoid chaos and an atmosphere of conflict between the EU27 and the United Kingdom. Therefore, the European Council invited the Commission, the European Parliament and the Council to ensure that this agreement can enter into force on the 1st of November 2019. Now we are all waiting for the votes in both parliaments. On a more personal note, what I feel today is, frankly speaking, sadness. Because in my heart, I will always be a Remainer. And I hope that if our British friends decide to return one day, our door will always be open. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Boris Johnson insisted he was very confident MPs would back the deal. But the immediate response from the opposition and even partners in a supporting party were hostile.
And I'm very confident that when my colleagues in Parliament study this agreement, that they will want to vote for it on Saturday and then in succeeding days. This is our chance in the UK as Democrats to get Brexit done and come out on October the 31st. It's our chance to focus on our priorities, the people's priorities. We've been at this now, as I say, for 3.5 years. It hasn't always been an easy experience for the UK. It's been long, it's been painful, it's been divisive. And now is the moment for us as a country to come together. Now is the moment for our parliamentarians to come together and get this thing done. Thank you very much for your question.
Meanwhile, the Leave and Remain voters reacted to the news that a Brexit deal has been reached between the UK and the EU. The deal was sealed just hours before a summit of EU leaders that is expected to endorse the text, but it must pass the British Parliament when it meets on Saturday. Take a look.
Cobbled together just to satisfy, as I say, this sort of game, and I don't think it's going to be in any way acceptable.
It's Mrs May's deal with any little tweaks and twerks. It's not worth having. It won't be of any use to us, and it won't be leaving. It'll, well, actually, it's worse than actually remaining.
I think we should keep things simple, like the original voting document, Cameron's vote referendum. All it said on that document was leave or remain. Nothing about dodgy deals. You know, we don't want all these grubby deals. We just want out.
I think the deal that has been reached is nonsense. Parliament are not going to get it through in time. There is no option. They have to get an extension. And then the deal can be analysed properly, and just like May's deal, it'll be thrown out.
The Clásico between Barcelona and Real Madrid, Spain's biggest football match, has been postponed due to protests in Catalonia, the Spanish Football Federation announced on Friday. The two clubs have until 10 a.m. on Monday to find a new date, which will be decided by the RFEF if they cannot reach an agreement. The original fixture was due to take place at Barca's Camp ONU on October 26. The two dates reportedly being considered are Wednesday, December 18, when other Spanish teams are involved in the Copa del Rey, and Saturday, December 7. The Clásico was said to be Barcelona's first home game. Now, the protests here come after the Spanish Supreme Court sentenced Catalan independence leaders to between 9 and 13 years in prison on Monday. The ruling has sparked violent demonstrations across the city, and there were fears protesters would use the match against Madrid to stage further acts of unrest. Barcelona's football club, which is regarded as a symbol of Catalanism, responded on Monday with a statement insisting prison sentences are not the solution. La Liga then proposed to the RFEF that the venue of the Clásico be changed from Camp NOU to Madrid Santiago Bernabeu, but neither club were keen to accept the switch. Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney tells a reporter that the withholding of the military aid to Ukraine had nothing to do with former Vice President Joe Biden. Take a look.
On the call, the president did ask about investigating the Bidens. Are you saying that the money that was held up, that had nothing to do with Biden?
No, the money held up had absolutely nothing to do with Biden. There's no question. And that was the point I made to you.
Now, President Donald Trump's chief of staff said that the White House tied military aid to Ukraine, investigating a theory that the country helped Democrats in the 2016 presidential election. Mick Mulvaney told reporters there was nothing wrong with making the quid pro quo previously denied by the White House. He said the U.S. Justice Department itself was probing the allegation, widely viewed as a groundless conspiracy theory, that the Democratic National Committee had hidden a computer server in Ukraine that would undermine claims that Russian meddling helped President Trump to election victory 3 years ago. Mulvaney said that the nearly $400 million in military support pledged to Ukraine was frozen in July because President Trump did not want to send money into a corrupt country.
It should come as no surprise to anybody. The last time I was up here, I haven't done this since I was chief of staff, right? Last time I was up here, some of you folks remember, it was for the budget briefings, right? And one of the questions y'all always ask me about the budget is, what are y'all doing to the foreign aid budget? Because we absolutely gutted it, right? President Trump is not a big fan of foreign aid. Never has been, still isn't. Doesn't like spending money overseas, especially when it's poorly spent. And that is exactly what drove this decision. I've been in the office a couple times with him talking about this. He said, look, Mick, this is a corrupt place. Everybody knows it's a corrupt place. By the way, put this in context. This is on the heels of what happened in Puerto Rico, when we took a lot of heat for not wanting to give a bunch of aid to Puerto Rico because we thought that place was corrupt. And by the way, it turns out we were right. So the demand for an investigation into the Democrats was part of the reason that he ordered to withhold funding to Ukraine. The look back to what happened in 2016 certainly was part of the thing that he was worried about in corruption with that nation. And that is absolutely appropriate.
Withholding the funding.
Yeah, which ultimately then flowed. By the way, there was a report that we were worried that the money wouldn't, if we didn't pay out the money, it would be illegal. Okay, it would be unlawful. That is one of those things that has that little shred of truth in it that makes it look a lot worse than it really is. We were concerned about in our over at OMB about an impoundment, and I know I just put half of you folks to bed, but there's the Budget Control Act, Budget Control Impoundment Act of 1974 says that if Congress appropriates money, you have to spend it. Okay, at least that's how it's interpreted by some folks. And we knew that that money either had to go out the door by the end of September, or we had to have a really, really good reason not to do it. And that was the legality of the issue.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happened as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy. We were holding up money at the same time for what was it? The Northern Triangle countries. We were holding up aid at the Northern Triangle countries so that they would change their policies on immigration. By the way, and this speaks to an important. I'm sorry. This speaks to an important point, because I heard this yesterday, and I can never remember the gentleman who testified. Was it McKinney, the guy? Is that his name? I don't know him. He testified yesterday. And if you believe the news reports, okay, because we've not seen any transcripts of this. The only transcript I've seen was Sondland's testimony this morning. If you read the news reports and you believe them, what did McKinney say yesterday? Well, McKinney said yesterday that he was really upset with the political influence in foreign policy. That was one of the reasons he was so upset about this. And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy. I'm talking to Mr. Carl. That is going to happen. Elections have consequences, and foreign policy is going to change from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. And what you're seeing now, I believe, is a group of mostly career bureaucrats who are saying, you know what, I don't like President Trump's politics, so I'm going to participate in this witch hunt that they're undertaking on the Hill.
Now, the admission appeared to add support to the impeachment inquiry in Congress that President Trump pressured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to open investigations that could benefit Trump's political standing.
With his acknowledgement now that military aid to a vital ally, an ally battling Russia, as we speak, was withheld in part out of a desire by the President to have Ukraine investigate the DNC server or Democrats or 2016, things have just gone from very, very bad to much, much worse. The idea that vital military assistance would be withheld for such a patently political reason, for the reason of serving the President's re-election campaign, is a phenomenal breach of the President's duty to defend our national security. And I hope that every member, Democrat and Republican, will speak out and condemn this illicit action.
Eagle News will be right back.
Ako si Lorena Ramirez Torno ng Manggahan, Quezon City.
Abangan ninyo ang aking lulutuin sa Pasiklaban sa Kusina.
Hi! Ito po si Imelda Papin. Meron po akong surprise sa inyong lahat. I will be celebrating my 45th year anniversary in show business. Ito po ay gaganapin this coming October 26. Saturday po yan, alas 6 ng gabi. Dito po gaganapin sa Philippine Arena. So, maghanda na po kayo dahil this is something different. Alam niyo po, gusto ko magpasalamat sa inyong lahat dahil na-maintain ko po ang career ko. Una sa Panginoon, syempre po sa inyong lahat na nagsuporta po sa akin. Kaya, I'll see you all sa Philippine Arena at 6 o'clock in the evening, October 26. Napakarami ko po mga guests dyan. Hindi ko na po babanggitin isa-isa. Maraming salamat po. See you October 26.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
China's economy expanded at its slowest rate in nearly 3 decades in the third quarter, hit by cooling domestic demand and a protracted U.S. trade war, according to data, with an official warning of mounting downward pressure. Take a look.
总的来看，前3季度国民经济运行总体平稳，但也要看到，当前国内外经济形势依然严峻复杂。 全球经济增长放缓，外部不确定、不稳定因素增多，国内经济下行压力较大。看到近期中美经贸磋商取得了阶段性的成果，这是好事，对市场、对这个中美两国的市场有积极的这种刺激作用，对全球也是一个好的信号，是吧？所以我们觉得这个全球经济，包括全球的这个贸易。 这个越来越朝着这个减少保护和往这个自由方向发展，世界经济包括中国经济都会有更好的这种发展。谢谢。
The gross domestic product expanded 6% in July to September, down from 6.2% in the second quarter, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The reading, in line with an AFP survey of 13 analysts, is the worst quarterly figure since 1992, but within the government's target range of 6 to 6.5% for the whole year. The economy grew 6.6% in 2018. Beijing has stepped up support for the economy with major tax and rate cuts and has scrapped foreign investment restrictions in its stock market. On Wednesday, the central bank said it was pumping 200 billion yuan or $28 billion into the financial system through its medium-term lending facility to banks, which is designed to maintain liquidity. But the efforts have not been enough to offset the blow from softening demand at home. The trade conflict and weak domestic demand prompted the International Monetary Fund to lower its 2019 growth forecast for China to 6.1% from 6.2% on Tuesday. The long-running trade war with the U.S. has also chipped away at the Chinese economy. The United States imposed tariffs on a record $7.5 billion worth of European Union goods on Friday, despite threats of retaliation with Airbus, French wine, and Scottish whiskies among the high-profile targets. The tariffs, which took effect just after midnight in Washington, came after talks between European officials and U.S. trade representatives failed to win a last-minute reprieve. The WTO endorsed onslaught from U.S. President Donald Trump also comes as Washington is mired in a trade war with China and could risk destabilizing the global economy further. In the line of fire are civilian aircraft from Britain, France, Germany, and Spain, the countries that formed Airbus, which will now cost 10% more when imported to the U.S. But the tariffs also target consumer products such as French wine, which President Trump had vowed to attack in recent months. Wines from France, Spain, and Germany will now face 25% tariffs. Speaking in Washington hours before the tariffs were due to come into effect, France's Economy Minister Bruno Le Maire warned the move would have serious repercussions. At a news conference to open the annual meetings of the World Bank Group and International Monetary Fund, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva urged world leaders to work together to counter a synchronized slowdown in the world economy.
The global economy is now in a synchronized slowdown. Fractures driven by trade, driven by uncertainty surrounding geopolitical tensions and Brexit. They're holding back growth and they're causing hazards in this shared road we are traveling on. They're slowing us down.
She said if trade tensions between the U.S. and China continue with no relief on tariffs, forecasts call for a cost to global growth of 0.8%, but she welcomed news of a possible easing of trade tensions.
This truce discussed could very well reduce the loss by 0.2%. And that, of course, is good news, but not good enough. What we need is to reach not just truce, we need to have trade peace. We need to go back to we need to go forward to a system that is enhanced and it is enforced, so we can see trade to return to its role of an engine of the world economy.
Now, she also praised Thursday's news of a Brexit deal.
This is good news. This, of course, is welcomed. Very similar to the pound, which jumped. I saw the news and I jumped. Great. We would like to see the agreement being reached. If I could quote my former boss, Jean-Claude Juncker, who said, "When there is a will, there is a deal." My hope for the next days is that the will holds in all quarters, and in the process to secure a safer and more efficient journey.
Now, experts are gathered at the International Monetary Fund for a discussion titled Sustainable Development Goals, Making It Happen. A panel of finance, development, and thought leaders discussed how to pursue the Sustainable Development Goals, a comprehensive agenda that countries adopted in 2015. Now, much of the talk focused on financing. Let's listen in.
Unfortunately, countries are not on track, as a general matter, are not on track to achieve the goals, and even if they had the right intentions, wouldn't have the funding to be able to do it.
So here it is my pledge, and I would like to encourage everyone to help us to gain this fight and put all the partnerships together, the private, the public, and basically do the sustainable investments as well, because only jointly we can implement the SDGs.
I think what will happen is that companies will see their own business interest in investing in sustainability, as long as the framework is predictable, the direction of policy is clear. But we don't have that yet, and the risk then becomes manageable. But the problem is, it's not clear yet. And until we have that, we spend a lot of time and effort trying to de-risk a private investment through the use of public resources that could perhaps be devoted to the investments that David was talking about that are not suitable for private investment.
The question that I want to ask is, when we talk about private investment, about creating this conducive environment, especially in those countries that are debt-ridden, they're in debt distress, it's not attractive. I heard that in some places it's not attractive for private investors to go in there. So what do governments do? Governments end up giving more and more incentives to bring in these companies. What is the return on investment to the public? Because what we've seen so far in a lot of places, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there are good examples, but what we've seen is public resources are used to incentivize private sector coming in. And yet, when you look at the equation in terms of what does the public get back, right? It's not decent jobs. It's businesses that don't respect human rights. It's businesses that actually don't respect climate change. It's businesses that don't respect women and women's rights in terms of labor laws.
And experts are still gathered at the International Monetary Fund on Wednesday for a discussion titled Big Tech and the Future of Finance. A panel of business, technology, and thought leaders discussed the opportunities and the challenges of technology in finance. Technology offers a way to even the playing field, according to David Marcus, the head of Calibra, Facebook's digital wallet. Take a look.
Pre-internet, we were in a world where we used to pay up to $1 a minute for an international call and 15 or 20 cents per text message, and suddenly with the internet we can now communicate for free with a $30 Android device. And when you think about money, it hasn't really evolved the same way, and the same person with a $30 Android device doesn't have access to digital money at all. If anything, the poorer you are, the more you're paying for financial services.
Meanwhile, CNBC technology correspondent Elizabeth Schultz moderated the event. Let's listen in.
Do tech companies need to abide by the same rules that banks abide by, or should there be an entirely new set of rules here?
That's simple. The answer is yes. Same risks, same rules. And one of the important things when we get into payments, for example, is what we're realizing as regulators is that we need to look at the ecosystem as a whole. So not just a narrowly defined slice of the payment system, because it is in many respects all interconnected.
Now, Nandan Nilekani, co-founder and chairman of Infosys Technologies Limited, said tech payment systems must be compatible with each other.
So I think payment is so fundamental to an economy that you need an interoperable payment system, which is very, very critical. And therefore, I think they have to give us an answer on how it's going to be fully interoperable. The other point is cross-border. I'll just spend a minute. Cross-border remittance is a huge challenge. Today, the world has $689 billion of cross-border remittance from 230 million migrants.
Yes.
And here's Ben Bernaldez for our sports news. Ben?
China denied that it demanded that the NBA fire a Houston Rockets executive over a tweet supporting pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. Rockets general manager Daryl Morey ignited a firestorm earlier this month with a tweeted image captioned, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." It came right before the Los Angeles Lakers and Brooklyn Nets arrived in China for what proved to be a tense two-game exhibition tour, with broadcasters refusing to air the games and local sponsors cutting ties with the NBA. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said Thursday that the Basketball League was also being asked to fire Morey by the Chinese government by the parties we dealt with, government and businesses. Asked whether Beijing pressured the NBA to fire Morey, Foreign Minister spokesman Geng Shuang told reporters in Beijing on Friday the Chinese government has never raised this kind of demands. In other stories, soccer star Megan Rapinoe and boxer Clarissa Shields have been honored as Sportswomen of the Year by the Women's Sports Foundation. They won in the team and individual categories, the awards coming at the foundation's 48th annual salute to women in sports. Rapinoe led the U.S. to victory at the World Cup in France and earned the FIFA Player of the Year award. Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist and middleweight champion. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez and I'm 1 with 25.
In Las Vegas, Mix It Up brings together dance towns and promotes confidence in the youth. Jenny Bensurto and Ronnie D. Cabulong with the story.
Hey guys, I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ronnie.
And we're here at Mix It Up.
Presented by Culture Shock here in Las Vegas.
And this is a dance program that showcases
young talent across Las Vegas.
So let's go!
Showcase together is just kind of like the bonding of the dance community, what Las Vegas to offer. It's also our fundraising too, and also getting everybody familiar what Culture Shock is and what the mission for being nonprofit and youth outreach programs.
creatively and emotionally. And a lot of times there's so many problems going on, whether it be at school, at home, problems that life brings, and dance is a way to come in and express that, whether it's through hip-hop, contemporary, tap, lyrical, b-boy, acro. There's so many ways to let out, whether it be sadness, anger, frustration, happiness. So hopefully we're providing that outlet for the kids.
Shock is really fun, and we all laugh and play, but then when it comes to preparing for the dances, it's very strict.
Las Vegas is such a heartwarming place. All these people are like family to me. We've grown together. Yes, sometimes it's hard with rehearsals because we're working so hard to get at the places we're at now, but all the teachers really help us and support us. And even at our hardest times, they always try to bring us up.
Future Shock was my first dance group that I was actually a part of, so it just incorporated in a weird way because it was just an interest of mine, and I was like, oh, we should do hip hop with taekwondo, and it just became this whole fusion thing that we really love doing now.
My kids right now are like in their prime. They're like young teenagers. They have so much energy and they're so focused on just dancing so much that they dance before the shows, they dance after the shows, they dance in the show. So I think as an instructor, I'm really lucky to have a group of kids that really want to do it and are ready to be pushed hard.
Such a good thing to be a part of a community, just in anything. It could be dance, it could be martial arts, just anything. Just be together with some organization that is going to get you doing better with yourself and being around good people.
So I really enjoyed the entire thing. There's so many different styles of dance.
There's a lot of young talent out here in Culture Shock. A lot of young kids are trying to express themselves through dance, and it's an amazing and humbling experience to see. So with that being said, I'm Ronnie.
And I'm Jenny.
Thanks, guys, and that's the news for tonight. I'm Alma Angeles. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, thank you, and we'll see you soon. Always One with 25. Good night.